Good day. I wanted to put together a video to talk about quality management. So if you log into the ESO dashboard, you'll be able to come to this dashboard, and you can go to QM right here in the middle. So QM stands for quality management, and the idea behind this is obviously battalions and acting battalions, they do documentation reviews, but we're going to talk about clinical reviews specifically. So you go to QM, you go to clinical reviews. We're not really doing billing reviews. That would be more Beth and Bree's kind of section, but we're going to talk about clinical reviews. So you hit clinical reviews, and obviously, these are the ones I've done in the past. I currently do all the cardiac arrests, just to compare the protocol and such. It's just kind of just something I've been doing over the time. But also, you can do any and all, because pretty much all of us have admin rights to do that. So pretty much what you can do is change your view and selection up here to clinical review, and then all reviews. And then obviously anything that's not green or red or whatever will show us not reviewed. So we'll click on one of these calls and just kind of go through how to do it. So all reviews, clinical reviews, and then if you want to change it to a different kind of setup here, we'll talk about review committee here in a little bit. Or if you want to go to past ones, we'll talk about where these come into play. Captain Martin and I, and we talked to some of us, discussed how we want to move forward with this quality management. We have obviously identified that we probably need to have some QC, QA, whatever you want to call it, on top of what documentation review there is. Really diving into our clinical practice and kind of keeping our providers on their toes when it comes to pushing them to, staying with the protocol. Obviously, we've had a lot of changes over the last year, 2 years, and making sure that they know, oh, I can do this or I can do that, whatever it may be. So let's dive in. So you click on a run. Obviously, you'll see the clinical review number up here, incident number, and then the review status is something you'll click at the end. So let's say it's something, this run is concerning. You want to get more feedback from the rest of us. And so from my understanding, Captain Martin, myself, Adam Gladys, and Captain Harrison will be reviewing some of these runs. All of us will have different shifts. That would kind of spread it out equally as much as possible. And but we're kind of the review committee, I would kind of say. So if you have a concern or something you want to bounce off some of us, you can actually set the status to review committee, and then we can all go into the system and go to this clinical review section and look at whatever run it may be. Review complete is pretty much I've reviewed it completed, and maybe this is just another layer that you can review complete, and then at some point, for example, not that we're necessarily going to be doing this. So, like I was saying, this may be something that we might push on to whoever we may consider to be the lead of the committee, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Or what I usually do is I mark it as closed, that it's reviewed, there's no issues, there's nothing I need to bounce off anybody else, and you hit close. And this is what you do at the end of your review. So your name will be up here if you want to pick somebody else. Captain Harrison or Gladys or Captain Martin, you can, select that person, you can reassign it to a different reviewer if you so choose. The rating is, what do you think of the call? Obviously, these are going to be selected when you're done reviewing the PCR and maybe some files. So whatever your intention here is, and we want honest feedback. So if you think a report is poor, that'll be tracked in the data, and the clinician should probably, or provider should, respond to that if need be, especially if we make a trail for this. And then last but not least, this clinical review. These are the headlines of all our protocols in our the Cleveland Clinic protocols. So it's a very general category. I didn't dive deep into specific actual ones. We can actually add to these if we so choose. So if you find something that you want, pediatric SVT or narrow complex tachycardia, we can add those specific protocols. But to start this, I just added general titles of each protocol in our current protocol. So what I usually do is I come in here, I just look at the information, who the lead provider was, the patient, and what the chief complaint was. And obviously, the battalions are looking at this also, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper into, how was the call? Did we need to do something more, less, whatever it may be? So 2 ways to look at the PCR. You can come up here and hit PCR, or you can come over here and hit pop out CPR or PCR. So one is, I'm going to hit PCR here. It'll load, and then you'll just kind of go through. And this is a generalized weakness patient. We got medications here. We did, the background on what went on with this patient. We have 2 sets of vitals, and that's a pet peeve of mine, but some of us might have other thought processes along this, but I'll look at vitals to see, is there anything off the wall? Obviously, this patient was slightly tachycardic. They were febrile. Glucose is up a little bit, so I wonder what's going on here. Did we have our 12 lead and 4 lead documented? Because sometimes it's listed down here in the flow chart, but it's not documented exactly what it is. So I'm not sure if people think that when you do a 12 lead, that when you import the vitals, that information automatically uploads. It does not. We still have to make a manual interpretation and what the ECGs are. And then and I'm a big flowchart person or procedure person. Not that we necessarily need to do them all the time, but documentation purposes. So it's all fine and dandy that we document that stuff in the narrative, but when it comes to documentation of procedures, we need to know when it happened. So sometimes in cardiac arrest runs, it's been better lately, but sometimes we put the information in the narrative, but there's nothing in the flow chart referring to that procedure or medication, for example. So when I report to the CARES registry, it's really of a guesstimation. There's no exact anything. And then let's say, God forbid, we get subpoenaed to court, there may be an issue. So I'm always looking for making sure the times and then the flow charts are being accurately used. Obviously, the system requires one type of assessment. Depending on the call, it might dive a little bit deeper into, okay, this is a stroke call, so I need to go neurological or whatever it may be. I read the narrative just kind of to go through and make sure it's just not 2 or 3 sentences, that it gives a good overview of what the call was. It closes good, and it appears from this report that it is good. Look at the information, look at the times, make sure all that stuff's good to go, which usually this is a redundancy because the battalions are looking at it already. And then, who was on the crew. And I'm not necessarily concerned about signatures or anything else here. So that's kind of my review. What I do is a good, well thought out, documented report. And then sometimes I'll go to files, I'll look at the 12 lead to see if there's, more for my own education, that there's something funky that they reported that I can look on here and be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then last but not least over here is messages. So if you want to send the provider a message, and also I found out recently that any feedback that you provide over here, that it will only be shown if you send a message to them. So any feedback you put in here stays with the QM system. The note, add a note, stays with the PCR. So in this kind of section here. So if you want to provide any feedback, you would have to add the feedback over here and then send them a message saying, hey, good job on this PCR, or whatever that may be. So just an FYI on that. Or if you want to, send a message, be like, hey, I was reviewing this report, remember to do this, or hey, good job on that report. This is the whatever it can be. So last but not least, I go back here, I say, yep, this was a good report. Actually, I'm gonna put it a very good. And this was obviously a sick person, so it falls under adult medical emergencies. And then I'll just add a little feedback here. Obviously, there's all these feedback categories over here. From my understanding, we cannot add to these. I'll double check with that, but I'm pretty sure we can't. So I'll just say, none, and I'll say, well done. I'll hit save. It says it here. If there's a note, obviously it's private to this review, and that's it. And other than that, that's all I need to do with it. And then I hit closed because it's a good report. And there you have it, all said and done. So last but not least is obviously, we're going to probably meet to discuss this further, but I wanted to put a video together to kind of get your thought process and kind of the flow that we should probably be having here. Obviously, the hospital and our medical director, Dr. Smith, is reviewing these. But on top of that, we want to, make sure that we do our due diligence and make sure that we're keeping our own peers on board. So any questions, let me know. Outside of that, thank you for your time.